If you happen to be wondering who are the most positive fan bases in the NBA, you've come to the right place. The team over at Casino.org conducted a study through Reddit on all 30 NBA teams, ranking them from the most optimistic to the least optimistic entering the 2018-19 season. The studies were conducted between the months of July and September 2018, right before the 2018-19 season. When you look at the bottom of this list, you'll be surprised to see some contenders. When you look at the top of this list, you'll be shocked to see some lowly franchises who haven't made the playoffs in years or haven't won a championship in decades, if ever. The bottom line is, you'll be surprised overall at the results of this list when you look from bottom to top. Enjoy! Well, it's not hard to see why the Kings are dead last on this list. They have the longest non-playoff streak in the NBA, having not made the playoffs since the 2005-06 season. Luckily for Sacramento fans, they should be a bit more optimistic these days. This team is in playoff contention, as they're currently just a game out of the 8th spot in the West. The Hawks have been in full rebuilding mode since 2017, but the fan base should feel more positive after how the 2018-19 season has played out. Trae Young is a star in the making and Atlanta is actually not that bad as they've already won 20 games this season, they won 24 last year. The Rockets have bounced back from a slow start to the 2018-19 season to respectability, but I'm having a hard time grasping how the Rockets could be this low on the list as far as title expectations. They were one game away from the finals last year and yeah, we all knew the Carmelo Anthony addition would be disastrous, but to be the third least optimistic team on this list, that is one negative fan base. The Sixers have been a team on the rise since last season and they only got better since this poll was conducted with the additions or proven veterans such as Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris. I still don't see why Philly would be this hard on the team considering they were in the semifinals last year and were expected to be one of the top 2 teams in the conference entering this season. The Bucks have one of the top 3 players in the game and were coming off of a playoff appearance last season. They followed up their low expectations by having the best record in the NBA. You're welcome, Milwaukee. We all know the Knicks are a terrible franchise and their fan base knows it. This franchise has won one playoff series since the 2001 season and is the worst team in the NBA at the current moment. It looks like the Wizards fan base knows the team better than the franchise itself. The Wizards have been a lowly franchise that have been a playoff contender, but have never really been a championship contender over the past decade. Things finally hit the wall this season as the Wizards have never been in the playoff race and key players such as Otto Porter, Kelly Oubre Jr. and Austin Rivers were traded. The Grizzlies missed the playoffs last season by having the worst record in the Western Conference due to the injuries of Mike Conley and Marc Gasol. There was some optimism this season that Memphis could return to their winning ways through grit and grind, but it wasn't meant to be. Memphis is once again one of the worst teams in the league and Gasol was traded to the Raptors. Grit and grind is officially dead, people. The Blazers are in the unenviable position of being one of the top teams in the Western Conference, with no chance of beating the Warriors. They were the third best team in the West last season only to be embarrassingly swept in the first round. It's no wonder why the fan base wasn't too optimistic heading into this season as the Blazers continue to be one of the top 4 teams in the West, with no real hope of advancing deep into the postseason. It's a credit to the Suns fan base that they're actually this season. This is a team that hasn't made the playoffs since 2010 and is once again the worst team in the Western Conference. However, Devin Booker continues to show he's an elite scorer and DeAndre Ayton has proven that he's far from being a bust. Although the Lakers signed the best player in the game in the offseason, most people knew this would still be a rebuilding year. The best-case scenario with the current roster would probably be a playoff appearance and a first-round exit. Fast forward to February and that's exactly what the Lakers appear to be. Considering the dysfunction of the franchise led by executives Gar Forman and John Paxson, Bulls fans are a really optimistic bunch. The Bulls are once again one of the worst teams in the East, but they do appear to have budding stars in Lauri Markkanen and Zach LaVine. The Nuggets hadn't made the playoffs since the George Karl era in 2013 despite coming very close over the past 2 seasons. While Denver was expected to be a playoff team this year, I don't think anybody expected them to jump all the way to being the second-best team in the Western Conference 3/4 of the way through the season. The Celtics fan base has high expectations. The franchise has won the most NBA titles in history and they've come up a series short of the NBA Finals each of the past 2 seasons. So far, the 2018-19 version has disappointed, as they're currently the 5th best team in the East with Kyrie Irving's departure a real possibility in the offseason. The Timberwolves entered the season in a confusion situation. We all knew about Jimmy Butler's dissension with Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, but did we really figure it would result in Butler demanding a trade early on in training camp? Regardless, the Wolves weren't expected to do much damage even with that trio. Even after trading Butler and firing head coach Tom Thibodeau, Minnesota is still a respectable team with a 28-31 record. The Raptors acquired Kawhi Leonard after trading the greatest player the franchise had ever seen in DeMar DeRozan. Toronto had also fired reigning Coach of the Year Dwayne Casey, so understandably, there was a neutral feeling in Toronto entering the 2018-19 season. Luckily for the fan base, the Raptors have exceeded expectations and currently hold the second-best record in the NBA. I'm actually surprised the Heat are this high. They had the NBA's highest payroll entering the season, stuck with the ridiculously bad contracts of Hassan Whiteside, Tyler Johnson and James Johnson. Since then, they've managed to get rid of Tyler Johnson's contract and they're about 1.5 games back of the 8th and final spot in the East. How the Cavaliers are the 13th on this list boggles my mind. We all know how negative Cleveland sports fans can be, and considering they were spurned by LeBron James for the 2nd time, how could they be this optimistic about their title hopes in 2019? Who conducted this poll? Dan Gilbert. Why the fan sentiment is this low for the most dominant team in the NBA doesn't make any sense. You have 5 All-Stars in your starting lineup, what more can the Warriors do to ease fans' minds? The Hornets have been the definition of a mediocre franchise, never advancing past the semifinals in their 30-year existence and really only featuring 1 star on their roster, Kemba Walker, entering the 2018-19 season. After missing the playoffs last year, Charlotte currently holds the 8th and final spot in the East playoffs in another forgettable season. The Spurs haven't missed the playoffs since the 1996-97 season, and if they can hold up over the last 2 months of the regular season, they'll clinch a playoff berth for an NBA record 22nd consecutive season. Although they're definitely not the championship contenders they were when Kawhi Leonard was there, they're a solid team with DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge leading the way. If this poll was conducted today, the Pelicans would be at the bottom of this list. The franchise was riding high after they won their first playoff series in the Anthony Davis era last season, only for it to quickly come crashing down as New Orleans proved they couldn't last as annual contenders in the tough Western Conference this season. Davis demanded a trade in January, and it's a foregone conclusion that the All-Star forward will be making his way out of New Orleans. The Pistons made a blockbuster trade last season when they acquired All-Star forward Blake Griffin. While the results didn't immediately show as they missed the playoffs, they do appear to be a playoff team again in 2019 as they have the 7th best record in the East. Despite not having made the playoffs since the 2015-16 season, the Mavs fan base is an optimistic one. They acquired highly hyped European sensation Luka Doncic, and the Rookie of the Year favorite has justified that optimism by exceeding the hype. Maybe the Nets fan base knew something we didn't about this team, as D'Angelo Russell has proven he can be a team's best player, and the Nets are looking at their first playoff berth since 2015. The Clippers narrowly missed the playoffs last year despite missing just about all of their key players due to injury last season. Since then, Los Angeles is about in the same tier, currently locked in as the West's 8th seed after the trade of leading scorer Tobias Harris. The Thunder have a great fan base, and despite 2 middling seasons in the post-Kevin Durant era, optimism was still high entering this year. Oklahoma City has exceeded expectations as Russell Westbrook has taken a backseat to Paul George, and Oklahoma City currently holds the 3rd best record in the West as a real threat to the Warriors. The Pacers had a ridiculously surprising 2017-18 season due to the emergence of Victor Oladipo as a star. They carried over that momentum into this season despite Oladipo's season-ending injury. Indiana has maintained pace as the East's 3rd best team. Why the Magic are the 2nd most positive fan base in the NBA doesn't make sense. Do they know that their team had perennially sucked since Dwight Howard left town in 2012, and there was, and still is, very little hope for any sustainable winning for this franchise? Now that I got all of the negativity out of the way, the Magic are just a game out of the final playoff spot in the East. So there's your positive. Utah loves them some Jazz. The Jazz had advanced to the semifinals in 2018 immediately after losing franchise star Gordon Hayward. They found a new stud scorer in Donovan Mitchell, and Rudy Gobert continues to illustrate it. He's the most intimidating big man in the NBA by leading the Jazz to the 6th best record in the rugged West.